HaKadosh Boker Tov, Masechet Yevamot Daf Pedaled Amud Aleph. We're going to start the new Perek Tishri, the 9th chapter, 9th Perek. It says over here as follows: Yesh mutarot lebalehen v'asurot livmehen. There's going to be some women that are permitted to their husbands, but they're going to be prohibited to their Yevamos, which means that the permission, meaning when they got married to their husbands, was be'eter. But if their husbands die, now they have to do chalitza, and they're not allowed to do the yibum. And obviously, we're going to speak about when is this case. Mutarot livmehen. There's other cases where the women are permitted to their Yevamos, right? Vasurot lebalehem, but they're prohibited to their own husbands, which means that their husbands, the marriage was done b'isur, and therefore, if their husbands die without children, they're allowed to do yibum. Okay, so that's the chidush. They're allowed to do yibum, but the yibum would be done be'eter. It was their marriage which was done b'isur. Obviously, the Gemara is going to explain all the different cases, right? And then it says, actually, the Mishnah is going to explain it. Then the Gemara says, Mishnah says, mutarot le'elu. Certain cases you're going to have permitted for both, meaning also for the husband and also for the yavam, which hopefully that's the majority of cases. And there's going to be some cases, vasurot le'elu. And now the Mishnah is going to go in to the explanations. So these are the women which are permitted to their husbands and permitted to the Yevamos. So a Kohen Idiot gets married to an almanah. Remember that a Kohen Idiot is allowed to get married to an almanah, right? But he's not allowed to get married to a grusha v'chalutza. Only a Kohen Gadol is not allowed to get married to an almanah. But a regular Kohen is allowed to get married to, allowed to get married to the almanah. Now his brother is a Kohen Gadol. So therefore, obviously, the almanah is not allowed to get married to the brother because the brother is a Kohen Gadol, so he's not allowed to get married to her. But to him, it was permitted. That's one case. Okay? Another case. Halal shenasa kshera. V'yesh lo ach kasher. Imagine you have a Kohen that he's a halal. So how is he halal? Either his father got married to grusha or chalutza, and now what happens is this child is a halal. So therefore, he gets married to a regular woman. Now, to him, right, it was permitted to the husbands. But now what happens is if the husband dies, now the Yishlo Ach Kasher, and he has a brother that's a Kohen Kasher, she's not allowed to get married to him, to do Yivim to him. Why? Because what happens is what? That since she got married to a halal, so that disqualifies her to the kiuna. So now she cannot do the yibum to the kohen. Another case, Yisrael shenasa bat Yisrael. Imagine right now a regular Jew that he gets married to a Jewess. Yeah, so you have a Jew with a Jew, right? Both normal, everything normal. So everything's fine. Yesh lo ach mamzer, but he's got a brother that's a mamzer. So for his marriage was permitted. Everything that's being done until now is permitted. But if he dies now, she's not going to go married to the mamzer, which is the brother. Next case, mamzer shenasa mamzeret. A mamzer that gets married to a mamzeret. V'yesh lo ach Yisrael. Now again, their marriage is permitted because a mamzer is supposed to get married to a mamzeret. There's no problem. So therefore, the mamzeret gets married to a mamzeret. He dies, and now the mamzeret cannot go to the ach Yisrael that he's kasher. So all these cases are mutarot levalehen, vasurot livmehen. How many cases do we have? Kohen Idiot to almanah, Halal to kshera, Yisrael to bat Yisrael ach mamzer, mamzer shenasa mamzeret, and ach Yisrael. So right now, 4 cases. Okay, the first one was 4 cases. Next, what are the cases in the second category, which are ve'elu mutarot livmehen? They're permitted to the Yevamos, but they're prohibited to their husbands. Right? Case number 1. Kohen Gadol shekidesh et almanav yesh lo ach Kohen Idiot. Right? So a Kohen Gadol, the vice versa, right? You have to invert. So what does that mean? A Kohen Gadol is not allowed to get married to an almanah. It says kim betula mi'alav yikach isha. Only to a betula you cannot get married to an almanah. So therefore, what happened was the Kohen Gadol, he does kiddushin to an almanah, which is asur to him. Now he's got a brother, which is a regular Kohen Idiot. She will be permitted to him. Second case, kasher shenasa halala. A Kohen kasher that gets married to a halala. So their marriage was prohibited, but he's got an ach, which is a halal. So now if he dies, this wife cannot get married to the halal ach. There's no problem. Case number 3, Yisrael shenasa mamzeret. A Yisrael that gets married to a mamzeret. So again, there was obviously an isur done in their marriage, but he's got a brother that's a mamzeret. So if he dies, the mamzer, the brother, can go with the mamzeret, which is his wife. No problem. That was case number 3. Case number 4, Mamzer Shenasa Bat Yisrael. A Mamzer that gets married to a Bat Yisrael, and he's got a regular brother that's a Yisrael. So in this case as well, the marriage was Beisur because a Mamzer cannot get married to a regular Bat Yisrael. But if he dies, she could go now with the which is the Yisrael. So there's no problem. So again, 4 cases. They're permitted to the Yevams, but they're prohibited to their husbands. Next, prohibited to both, also the husband and also to the Yavam. Kohen Gadol shenasal manah. Here was a Kohen Gadol that got married to an almanah, and also he's got a brother that's a Kohen Gadol. Yeah, so in such a case, right, there's 2 different isurim of achalala and almanah. He says this could happen if there was a psul in the Kohen Gadol, they put the brother in his place. So then he comes back to his place. There's a whole, because how do you have 2 brothers Kohen Gadol that are alive at the same time? So that's the case. Or second case, Kohen Idiot kasher shenasa halala. Kohen Idiot that's kosher that he gets married to a halala, and he's got a regular brother that's kasher. So again, she's prohibited also to the husband, also to the Yavam. Case number 3, Yisrael shenasa mamzeret. Yisrael that gets married to a mamzeret, and he's got a brother that's Yisrael kasher. So again, it's going to be prohibited for also the husband, also for the Yavam. Case number 4, a mamzer that gets married to a Bat Yisrael, and the brother is a mamzer. So therefore, just like the mamzer to a Bat Yisrael is an isur, so too if he dies, and now she would go to the brother, which is also mamzer, again, it's going to be asur. So all these cases, again, 4 cases, asurot le'elu ule'elu. Also for the husband and also for the Yavam. Next, ushar kol anashim, all the other women, if you realize we switched the order, obviously. Right, because in the beginning of the Mishnah we said mutarot lelu and then asurot lelu. We switched, so we first brought down the asurot lelu and then ushar kol anashim. Our mutarot levalehem, they're going to be permitted whether it's going to be to the husbands or to the Yavam. Nekuda. Okay. Now we're going to speak about, now that we just spoke about all the other cases which are permitted also to the husband, also to the Yevamot. Now we're going to mention another concept, which is shniyot la'arayot midivre sofrim. If you remember already in the beginning of the Yevamot, I don't remember Daf Yomi around that area. We spoke about shniyot la'arayot. So when we speak about the concept of shniyot la'arayot, here it says it's kaf amudal. Yeah. So when we speak about the concept of shniyot la'arayot, these are midivre sofrim, which means only the rabbis prohibited this level of relationships. Okay, but really mina Torah would have been permitted. So it says you have a woman that she's going to be shniya la'ba'al velo shniya la'yavam. Sometimes you could have that a woman is going to be the 2nd degree of immoral relationships to the husband, but not to the Yavam. So, for example, he says if the husband and the Yavam are brothers from the father and not from the mother. So now what happens is the husband comes and gets married to the grandmother, to Emimo. So therefore, Asura Ba'al is permitted to the husband, but she's permitted to the Yavam. Right, because for the Yavam, it was from the mother's side, so it's not from the father's side, so there's no problem. Sometimes you have the opposite case, shniya la-Yavam, velo shniya la-Ba'al. Sometimes you have that it's a second-class category of the moral relation to the Yavam, but not to the Ba'al. How do you have such a case? The exact same thing, right? For example, the shenasa Ba'al et emimo shel Yavam. So therefore, again, it's going to be shniya la-Yavam, but not shniya la-Ba'al. Again, because they're only brothers from the father, not from the mother. Asura Yavam, sometimes there's only going to be a Isur Rabbanan for the Yavam, but she's going to be 100% permitted to the husband. What's this case? And she needs Chalitza because Mina Torah, she has to do Yibum, right? And Shniya Lezev Lezev, Asura Lezev Lezev. Sometimes it's going to be a Shniya for both, meaning Shniya La'arayot for both the husband and the Baal, and sometimes it's going to be a Isur Rabbanan for the husband and the Baal, and therefore, again, if it's going to be Isur Rabbanan, she still needs Chalitza, because since Mina Torah, she was still married, so therefore she needs Chalitza. Okay? Now, in a case where we said that a woman is prohibited to the husband because of Shniya La'arayot, the rabbis came and gave certain knasot, certain penalties and fines, right, in order to lose their zechuyot. So, en la lo ketubah, velo perot, velo mezonot. So therefore, when she leaves her husband, she doesn't get a ketubah. So, for example, she was written a ketubah 18, 26, 36, 52, 100, it doesn't matter what it is, she doesn't get a ketubah. Not only that, lo perot, which means that she doesn't get perot. That means if the husband came and he ate the perot of the nikseh meluk during her lifetime, he does not have to pay her back. Velo mezonot, if the husband goes away, right, and now he comes and she's going to come and borrow money for her mezonot, he doesn't have to pay her back. right? Why? Because basically, since he was obligated to divorce her, so she took a loan now in order to start getting parnasa because he left town or skipped town. Doesn't matter. He doesn't have to pay the back. She has to pay it back. Velo blaot, right? She's not obligated to come and give back the clothing, right, that they used, right? And now they've started being worn out. And even if they're still there, doesn't have to return it. V'avlad kasher. However, though the child is going to be kasher even for kiuna, which means they're married to a kohen, but then they obligate him to come and to divorce her with a get. So now, at the end of the day, the child is still a kasher because at the end of the day, it's only it's only going to be a shniya. It's not a doraita, meaning you can't come and start disqualifying the child, right, on making a pagam, a defect on the child if there's nothing really there. You understand? So that's just important to know. Almana lekohen gadol u'grusha v'chalutza lekohen edyom. Mamzer l'tina leYisrael, bat Yisrael l'tina mamzer, yesh lahem ketubah. Now, however, though, even though in these cases there was also an isur done, if you have an almana getting married to a kohen gadol, so a widow to a kohen gadol, or a grusha v'chalutza, divorcee, or a chalutza to a kohen idiot or regular kohen, which is also permitted, mamzer l'tina to a regular Jew, regular Yisrael, or a bat Yisrael that gets married to a netina mamzer, right? They do have a ketubah, right? And they do have all the other different halachot that we mentioned above. This is the Rambam. We're going to explain the reason, right? Later on in Pehei Amud Aleph and Bet. What is the reason why these people do get a ketubah? Why didn't we make a knas for these people? Okay, so until here, this was the Mishnah. Okay, clear until here? Says the Gemara, my idia the tani nasha. Why is it that we spoke about, right? Sorry, we're talking about why idia the tani nasha over here. Why is it that we talked about a kohen idiot that gets married to an almana, which means that there was nisuin done, right? Litni kiddush. Why don't we just say a kohen idiot that did kiddushin to the almana? Because even if there was a kiddushin and not a nisuin, she's still permitted to the husband, the kohen idiot, and asura to the avam, the kohen gadol, because of almana. Now, says the Gemara, if you're going to tell me tamad bin nasa, the only reason why is because nasa. Because now you have the isur of a naseh and a lo ta'aseh, right? Why? Because we know that we have a positive commandment that the kohen gadol has to get married to a betula and not a beula, and he has a negative commandment of not getting married to an almana. So therefore, you have an naseh and a lo ta'aseh. So therefore, the mitzvah taseh of yibum cannot push off the lo ta'aseh naseh by the kohen gadol because it's a double header. You got a positive and a negative. Aval kiddush, but if there was only kiddushin and there was no nisuin, so therefore I would say over here ati aseh v'dachi lo taseh. So then there's only a negative commandment of almana, but there's no positive commandment of betula because she's still a betula. There was only kiddushin, not nisuin. So ati aseh, so should come the yiseh of yibum and push off the lo taseh of almana. He says, 1 second, our entire pedic is talking about mitzvot aseh of yibum, which are going to be pogea with a lo ta'aseh. For example, mamzeret to Israel, mamzeret to Israelit, halala to a kohen. All these cases were lo ta'aseh. There weren't anything more than that, as if not, like we mentioned before, if not, there would not be kiddushin at all. So obviously here we're talking about that there's obviously lo ta'aseh. And still, we never said that the positive commandment of yibum should come and push off the negative commandment, right? Why? Because all of these things we already said because of chayav elavin are going to be valtayavin to ashara. If you remember, we already said this is in Devarim over there. So we said over there that the entire concept of mitzvah of yibum pushing off a lo ta'aseh, we don't say that because we said that since it's written valtayavin to ashara, we don't say this concept of avaseh doche lo ta'aseh by yibum. So says the Gemara, you know why we actually said nisuin and not kiddushin? Because we needed to teach the seifa. What's the seifa? The seifa was talking about over there. There's the third group over there, where it's a surot for both, also the husband and also for the yavam. There we said kohen gadol shenasat almana. So a kohen gadol that gets married to an almana. Now he has a brother that's a kohen gadol or a kohen idiot. So now dafka nasa only if he got married, then the shavya halala, then he made her into a halala, because only through marriage is there a halala. Aval kiddush, if there was only a kiddushin by itself, Sharia lay, there's no halala, so therefore she would be permitted to do yibum to the kohen idiot. So therefore, just like in the third case, which is asurot lelu ve'elu, it had to be nisuin and not kiddushin. But if it was kiddushin, it would have been permitted because there's no halala. She doesn't become a halala. She only becomes a halala through marriage, not through kiddushin. So tananami reisha. So therefore, we also taught in the reisha nasa, even though it could have been wadin kiddushin as well. The Gemara says no. Ve'adetani mishum seifa. If you're going to tell me now because of the seifa, which is nasa, litni mishum mitziata. So what about the middle case? The middle case was the case where it's going to be permitted to the Yevams and prohibited to the husbands. So we said over there, Kohen Gadol that does kiddushin to an almana, and he has a brother that's a Kohen Idiot. There, you can't teach nasa. It had to be kiddush, right? Because it had to be kiddush. That's what we're saying over here, right? Because if it was going to be nasa, so then, right, to the Kohen Gadol, then she would have been a surah to the Yevamah, to the Kohen Idiot, mishum halala. And we just said in this case that she's going to be permitted to the Yavam and asur to the husband. Why? Right? If it would have been also, it would have been prohibited also to the Yavam. So says the Gemara, Ela mishum bat mukta. But rather, really, the reason why we taught nasa was because of a different reason. Because of the hefsek, right, which was on the side. What is the hefsek, which is going to be on the side, right? Mukta is be'akta, which is like a small, place that, basically we could actually somech on this. The kabayla mitzvah is we have to teach, right, in the cases of the women which are permitted to their husbands and permitted to the Yevamos, right, we said, halal shenasa keshera. If you remember, we spoke about a halal, that he got married to a woman that she's keshera, correct? Now, he's got a brother that's not a halal, that's a regular kohen. So, ta'ama, the reason why she's a surah to the Yevamah is because she got married to him. Right? There was relations, and therefore made her into a halala. Teshavya halala. Aval kiddush, but if there was only kiddushin and non nisuin, shari'alei, she would be permitted to do to the kohen. Umishum hachim, because of this case, which is the extra case there in the middle, umishum hachim ktani nasa. That's what we learned nasa, because of this case that it had to be dafka nisuin and not kiddushin. So now the Gemara is going to say, 1 second. According to now what you just said, we're going to ask another question. Why is it that we said a Kohen Idiot that comes and gets married to an almana? You could have also a Kohen Idiot that gets married to a betula. Why? Because once the Kohen Idiot dies, his wife is automatically an almana. And if she's automatically an almana, again, it's going to be pasul to the brother, right, which is Kohen Gadol. So why did I have to say, right, a Kohen Idiot that gets married to an almana? Even a Kohen Idiot that got married to a regular girl, Kohen Idiot that gets married to a betula. Once he dies, right, she's an almana, right, and she's not a betula anyway. So says the Gemara, 84b. So it says, if you're going to tell me, Kasavar Haitana, that this Tana holds Nisuim Arishonim Mapilin, right? Are you going to tell me now that really be'emet we hold that when she got married to the first brother and then he dies, it's the first Nisuim which make him fall to the Yibum, to the Yavam, which means that we take into consideration her matzav, her status quo at the time of the first marriage, and therefore, since she was an almana at the time, she's going to be permitted to the Yavam, which is the Kohen Gadol, even if she becomes an almana afterwards, right? Why? Because this is the pshat, which means I want to take the status quo of at the time of marriage, in the first time of marriage, and at the time she was kosher, she was 100% okay. Harrei. So 1 second, let's take another comparison, right? Another case. The case was in the cases where she was permitted to her husband and permitted to the Yavam. We said a halal shenasak shera, a halal that gets married to a woman that she's kshera. So now 1 second. There, if it's a halal that got married to a kshera, when does he make her into a halal? When he has a relations with her. But 1 second, when he gets married to her right now, is there a problem in her? There's no problem in her. She's 100% a kosher woman. So therefore, if I'm going to say that Nisuim Arishonim Mapilim, when this halal dies, right? So now 1 second. At the time of the status quo, she was kosher. So she should be able to come and get married to the Yavam. Why do we say now? No. She became a halala because of the relations, and therefore she can't go to get married to the brother-in-law, right? Because she's a halala. That means, well, she's not a halala. If I'm taking the status quo right now, right? Which means from the first marriage, it should be okay. So says the Gemara, you're right. So therefore what? Havada mishum seifa. It has to be that we brought down the almana because of the seifa. What's the seifa? Mishum the kabayla means the seifa. Kohen gadol shenasai et almana. V'yesh lo ach kohen gadol or kohen idiot. Imagine right now you have a case. These are the cases which were prohibited also for the husband and also for the yavam. A kohen gadol got married to an almana, so he already did the isur. Kohen gadol gets married to almana. Now he's got another brother that is a Kohen Gadol, either as we already explained why, that he was a Kohen Gadol in place, or whatever the case was, or Kohen Idiot. Now what happens is, says the Gemara, Daf Kalmana. Here, only an almana that she became a halala because of the Kohen Gadol. She's a surat Yevama, Kohen Idiot. Aval betula, but if she was a betula, chazile, she could get married to the Kohen Idiot. What's the problem? That's why in the first part of the Mishnah, we also taught almana. Which means in the first part of the Mishnah, we could have learned be'emet, right, the betula. But because of this case, that it had to be davka, right, almana and not betula, so too in the first case, we also taught almana and not betula, even though it could have been huadin betula. So Matkif, Rav Papa is now going to come and ask the following question. Im ita leha dechiyata Rav Dimi amar Rav Yochanan, if the halacha is like Rav Dimi, in that which he said in Rabbi Yochanan when he came from Babel, mitzri sheni shenasa mitzrit rishona. You remember we brought down over there what happens to do when you have the different generations of disqualifications. How does it work it out, right? So, for example, there we said that the halacha was when you have a mitzri sheni getting married to a mitzri rishona, bena sheni have. So the child is a sheni, not a shlishi. Meaning, it's not that we're going after whichever one is disqualified, right? And therefore, that disqualification takes over. We don't go after not the man or not the woman, the disqualification. So therefore, I don't care who's the Rishon, right? Or Rishonah, doesn't matter. The second there's a Rishon or Rishonah involved, the child becomes a Sheni, even though the other party was a Sheni or Shenit. Doesn't matter. Okay, we always go after the disqualification. So Litin Nami, so we should also learn. Mitzri Sheni Shenasa Shte Mitzriot. What happens now if you have a case of a Mitzri Sheni? That he got married to two Mitzriot. Achat Rishonah ve'achat Shniya. One of them is a Rishonah, and one of them is a Shniya. Vayulo banim Rishonah Shniya. Now he has children from both. So imagine, you have a Mitzri Sheni. If he would have got married to a Mitzri Sheni onwards, so that his children are 100% kosher already. But he got married to both. He got married to one Mitzri Rishonah and one Mitzri Shniya. Now he has children from both. So says the Gemara, now what happens is that, so again, the child from the first one becomes a Mitzri Sheni, and the child from the second one becomes a Mitzri Shlishi, which is permitted to Jews, right? 100% permitted to the Jewish nation. So in a Suv Ki or Chayv, if, right, two brothers got married normally, which means in the permitted fashion, which means the Sheni got married to the Shniya, and the Shlishi got married to a Israelite, mutarot lebalehen, so they're permitted to their husbands, vasurot livmehen, and they're permitted to their Yevamos, right? Again, because these are brothers from the father, not from the mother. So there's Yibum, right? One more time. Mitzri Sheni got married to a Mitzrit Rishonah, Mitzrit Shniya. He has children from both. Those are brothers mina av, lo mina em. So they do Yibum. Remember, brothers from the father do Yibum, not from the mother. But now the technical problem is one of the children is a Mitzri Sheni, and one of the children is Mitzri Shlishi. So now this Mitzri Shlishi, if he gets married, he's allowed to get married to a Bat Yisrael. So now the wife is permitted to get married to him. He's a Mitzri Shlishi, permitted. But she's prohibited in the Yavam, because the Yavam is the Mitzri Sheni, right? Mitzri Sheni makes sense, no? The Yavam, which is the brother, the Mitzri Sheni. Okay, so therefore, one more time, if they got married normally, so what happens? Each one is permitted to their husbands, but prohibited to the Yevamos. The same way, the vice versa. The Mitzri Sheni got married to a Mitzrit Shniya. Yeah? So now she's permitted to her husband. But if he dies, she's prohibited to the brother, because the brother is already Mitzri Shlishi, which is permitted to the Kahal. She would have been permitted to him. The Epuch Nasi, what happens if they did the opposite? Which means the Shlishi got married to a Shniya, and the Sheni got married to an Israelite. Which means, so now here, they're permitted to their Yevamos, but they're prohibited to their husbands. Because here, the Mitzri Shlishi was supposed to get married to a Bat Yisrael. He got married to a Mitzri Sheni, which is a problem. So therefore, it's a problem for the husband, but not for the Yevam. And the same way the other way around. Mutarot le'elu le'elu. And what's the case of, right? Mutarot le'elu le'elu. When you have a Gioret, right? They got married to one of the brothers. So therefore, the Shlishi is permitted to get married to her because he's a Yisrael. And the Sheni is also permitted. Why? Because Kal Kerim is not considered Kal Kerim. So therefore, that's permitted. So a Gioret is permitted to everybody. Also the husband, also the Yavam. Now, Surot Le'elu Le'elu is an Ailonit. Ailonit Israelite that got married to the brother, which is a Mitzri Sheni. So she's prohibited to the husband because she's a Israeli. But if she dies, she's also prohibited to the Yevamah because there's no Yibum by an Elonit. Okay? So therefore, what happens is, so then why is the Tana coming and teaching us that it's coming to exclude these cases, right? So says the Gemara, you know why? Tana v'shiyeh, because we left something out. What does that mean? So therefore, there's not a proof of the fact that we left something out, because we do leave things out, which means sometimes we come and we bring a list, right? And sometimes part of the list, we bring part of it that we left something out, that we didn't bring the entire list. So says the Gemara, my shir daisha, what did you leave out? Right? Well, obviously that means it has to be something else. That obviously it's mitzvah has to be something else also. He says shir pitzua daka. The pitzua daka. Why? Because the Tana could have said that there's also another case of pitzua daka for all of these cases. That means a Yisrael kasher that got married to a kashera, and he has a brother that's a pitzua daka. So she's permitted to the husband, but prohibited to the Yevamah. Or a pitzua daka that got married to Yisraelit, and he's got a regular brother. She's permitted to the Yevamah, prohibited to the husband. Or a pitzua daka that got married to Yisraelit, and he's got a brother pitzua daka. It's prohibited also to the husband, also to the Yevamah. And a gioretz was permitted in both cases. So we could have brought the case of pitzua daka in our Mishnah. We didn't bring it down. So the fact that we didn't bring down pitzua daka, we also didn't bring down the mitzvah. Okay? So says the Gemara, if it was only going to be because of the pitzua daka, lav shiyada. So it's not that you didn't leave anything over. Because we already taught all the cases of chayvin lavin. And the pitzua daka is a chayve lavin, which is also included. Meaning, I didn't have to spell out every single case. I spoke about all the cases of chayve lavin. Once we speak about chayve lavin, pitzua daka is a chayve lavin. So says the Gemara, atu chayve lavin milok tani v'hada tani. He says what? All the cases that we spoke about were also chayve lavin, and we also brought them down. Meaning, we could have made it much easier. We brought 4 cases in each one, right? We could have just brought one chayve lavin, the Gemara, and just time the just leave everything else out. So he says, "Vaktani kohen ediot shenasal mana, halal shenasak shena," and they're all cases of chayve lavin. So the fact that we did bring them down, why didn't we bring up pitzua daka? So says the Gemara, no, the case of the halal shenasak shena, we tzich lashminan k'Rav Yehuda Marav. We needed it like Rav Yehuda Marav. The Amar Rav Yehuda Marav says Rav Yehuda Marav, lo uzaru k'shterot v'yinaseh lepsulim. Do you know that according to Shita of Rav Yehuda Marav, he says that the kohanot, which are k'shterot, are not prohibited. They weren't warned to get married to somebody that's pasul to them, right? Which means that in the case of halal shenasak kshera, right, which is the case of halal getting married to kshera, which is permitted to the husbands and prohibited to the Yevams, the Tana is only coming to teach you that the isur is on the woman to do the yibum to the kohen, but the permission to get married to the husband, she was kshera. There's no problem, right? She has no isur of getting married to him, right? But there's no isur of this woman, right, becoming, right, this halala, or becoming this woman, getting married to somebody that's pasul to her. So says the Gemara, v'haktani halal shenasak shera, v'yisrael shenasa bat Yisrael v'shloach mamzeh. What are you talking about? Okay, fine, you're right. Halal shenasak shera taught us a chidush that a woman is not obligated to watch herself from not getting married to somebody that's pasul to her. But what about the next case? Yisrael that got married to a bat Yisrael, right, and he's got a brother that's a mamzeh. There's also a chayve lavin. So it says, Hanami lo me'adam mitznihu. He says, 1 second. Also, this case of Yisrael that gets married to a bat Yisrael and he's got a brother that's a mamzer, also is not, it's not a chazara. It's not teaching us something that we already learned. Why? The Ashmeinam, it's coming to teach us, lav she'eno shaveh bakol, the kamashmalan lav shaveh bakol. The case of the first one, which was, we're talking about the case of Yibum, which is a lav, which is not shaveh bakol. Now we're coming teaching you that there's going to be a mitzvah Yibum, even in a case which is a lav, which is shaveh bakol. Because at the end of the day, the previous one, right, the case of the halal to the keshera, it's not shaveh everybody. Because you could have another person, right, for example, another halal or whatever it is, that there was no isur. Here, a mamzer is prohibited to everybody. It's a lav shaveh bakol. So ever since it's a lav shaveh bakol, that's why it's going to be a different halacha. So says the Gemara, haktani Yisrael shenasa mamzer of Yeshloach Yisrael. What about the next case? A Yisrael that gets married to a mamzeret, and he's got a brother that's Yisrael, or a mamzer that got married to a mamzeret, and he's got a brother Yisrael. Here, we are learning the exact same thing, right? Which means here, there's nothing that's adding on. In every other previous case, we added on a chidush, whether it's that women are not obligated to get, to watch out that they can't get married to somebody pasul to them, or whether it's a lav shaveh bakol. Here, there's nothing extra. So therefore, what? Lav shemamina, tan mashir, shemamina. You're right. It's tan mashir. Says the Gemara Gufa, Amar Rabbi Yomarav says the Yomarav, lo zaruk shom lipsulim. We just learned the chidush 2 minutes ago that a woman is not obligated to watch herself not to get married to somebody that's pasul to her. Why don't we say that this is a proof? That which we said. Halal shenasak kshira. My love, kohenet. We're not talking about when it says a halal that he got married to kshira. We're not talking about a kohenet. Umay kshira. What does it mean kshira? Kshira lekuna, that she's kshira lekuna, and therefore she's permitted to get married to a halal. So we're actually learning it from the actual Braita, the Mishnah. That what? That a kohenet is allowed to get married to a halal, even though she's becoming halal. There's no problem. There's no prohibition. Says, well, no. Whoever told you kohenet? No, be Israelite. So what does it mean in kshira? It says kshira lakahal. It doesn't mean kshira lakiuna that she's a kohenet. No, it means that she's kshira lakahal. So says the Gemara, Yachid so yesh lo ach kasher, that he's got a kosher brother. Nami kasher lakahal. I would also say kasher lakahal. Mikadu pasul kahal. He is pasul to the kahal. So what are we talking about then? When it says kasher lakahal, mashma he's pasul lakahal. So obviously what? Elala, what are we talking about? That the brother's a kohen. So therefore, who kohen? If he's a kohen, afi kohen. So therefore, she's also a kohen. But it says kashera. If it says kasher, and kasher was talking about the kuna, right? So too, when it says kashera, it's talking about she's a kohenet. So says Gemara, midi idia. Are you comparing both cases together? Hakirita, kirita. Sometimes the word kasher could mean kasher lakahal, which means that he's a. And sometimes kasher could mean kashera, but it's not that kashera lakuna. Kashera just means kashera, that she's a kashera, meaning she's a Israeli. And when it says kasher for him, meaning that not always that you use the same terminology kasher, you have to apply both rules together. Kasher means that they're both kohanim, right, or kohenet, which are kasher to the kam to the kal. So Mati Rabbi Ben Nachman asked Rabbi Ben Nachman. It says in the Torah, "Isha lo yikahu." What does it mean lo yikahu? Melamed she'isha muzeret zayish. It comes in. Why does it say twice lo yikahu? Because it says twice. It says one more time. Isha lo yikahu. Isha lo yikahu. Why did it say twice lo yikahu? Ha'isha muzeret al yedei ish, which means the kavanah the Braita is that even a woman, which is she's a kohenet, she's warned not to get married to a halal. So here you have lo yikahu twice, one for the man, one for the woman. And so the Gemara, Rabbi says, Kol heicha dehu muzhar, he muzeret. You're right. Any place where he's obligated not to get married to a certain woman, for example, so to the woman is also obligated not to get married to him. But if he's not muzhar, for example, he's a halal getting married to kshira, now he's allowed to get married to a kshira. There's no isur for him. So therefore he lo mizdara. So therefore she also doesn't have the isur as well. So therefore it all depends. If it's an isur on him, it's an isur on her. If it's not an isur on him, it's not an isur on her. So says the Gemara, you learn from here. In Rav Yehuda Rav Nachman, you learn from Yehuda Rav. The Rav Yehuda Rav says to you that Rav Yishmael, when a person is going to come, he's going to do any type of a sin, right? There's always a same obligation of women to men. So we learn from here that just like she's also has a negative commandment, right? She has an honest, whether it's a malchut or correct. So therefore, why do we need this, pasuk of lo yikahu? I don't understand when it says ish or isha, a man or a woman, when they're going to do any types of chotot adam, any types of sins. So therefore, there's an ashema here, there's a guilt here. So too, they're always therefore just like the kohen is not allowed to get married to somebody that's pasul to him. So to she shouldn't get married to somebody that's pasula to her. So for why do you have to learn it from lo yikahu? Yeah. You learn it from over here, which is this pasuk of isha. Is the Gemara. If it was only going to be from the isha, havamina, I would have had a havamina that it's lava shaveh b'chol. That it has to be only if it's going to be a lav, which is for everybody, whether for the men or for the women. But if it's not going to be only in kohanim, for example, lo, I would say that it doesn't. So therefore, you need the lo yikahu, which is specifically speaking about the kohen. Because if it's talking about isha, so it has to be mamzer, which is by every Jew, by every single person, not only just by a kohen. So therefore, since it says now lo yikahu, therefore it's making equal the men to the women, and therefore the men to the women, you need a special pasuk that she's also going to be obligated in the negative commandment as well. We continue B'ezrat Hashem tomorrow morning.